I hope you've all fully recovered from the Battlefield 1 alpha on San Quentin Scar, because this week you're going to be able to get your teeth stuck into a brand new map called Sinai Desert when the beta lands on the 30th. Apart from the new map though, what should you expect from the beta? New weapons perhaps, new vehicles, maybe a new behemoth? Well, they're all here and in bundles. What else though? What about maybe the brand new elite classes? That would be cool, wouldn't it? You're in luck, they're also in here too. And of course, horses. That's right, we've seen them creep in, and if you haven't seen the stream of the new content, you're in for a treat because we get our first look at horses in the Battlefield 1 beta, and they're great fun. In the open beta, we'll also get some new vehicles to try out. The artillery truck for one, designed as a long-range vehicle. You've got the ability to switch between a mounted machine gun on the front or an artillery gun on the top, and there are two different variants including an anti-aircraft version. Let's hope it's not too OP. I had some fun with this, but I think it will take some getting used to, as the artillery isn't as long range as you might expect. It functions more as a cannon. You've also got the new transport vehicles or jeeps. This is an open vehicle with a mounted gun at the rear. It's a two-person vehicle and fairly vulnerable to gunfire, just like a jeep in Battlefield 4. You'll also get to try out some of the new weapon packages available on the vehicles, such as the Tank Hunter plane or the heavy flamethrower tank. It's not only new vehicles to try out either, there are new guns too. A new medic gun called the Selbstlader M1916, which is pretty amazing by the way, it just felt really good to use. I felt that I could hold my own at medium range and even get some long range shots with this as well. And then we've got the LMG from the trailers, the MG15, which I didn't mind too much, even if LMGs in BF1 aren't really as fun to use as the bolt actions. There's also a new sniper, the Gewehr M95, which I had a lot of fun using, not to be confused of course with the Gewehr 98. Also, gadgets galore, get your dynamite fix, although it doesn't stick to stuff, so no C4 horse charges. Also, you might want to utilise the binoculars, also known as the spotting scope for the scout class, and for the medic and support, you can use larger versions of the ammo crate and healing station. Now, on to more of the cool stuff, elite classes, horses, and of course, the armoured train. Let's start with the elites. In this build of the game, you'll be able to experience elites for the first time. Now, lots of people have likened these to the heroes in Battlefront, and while that's somewhat accurate, they're certainly not as overpowered as those pickups are. At certain points of the map, so on Sinai Desert it's B, F and E, there are three different pickups that you can go and grab. You can pick up the Flame Trooper at B. He comes equipped with a massive flamethrower, as you might imagine, and he can get in amongst groups of enemies and can be pretty brutal. He wears a gas mask, so his vision is slightly impaired and moves very slowly as well. Next at F, you can pick up the Sentry. He's a guy with a massive armoured suit as well as a water-cooled machine gun. What more is there to say really? He's good close-up, but because you can't ADS with him, at medium ranges he's actually not that great and very vulnerable. If you come up against him, keep your distance and try to attack from behind. He's got all this armour protection but doesn't have a gas mask, so fire, gas, anything along those lines are probably the best to deal with him. Lastly at E, we've got the Tank Hunter. He comes equipped with a Mauser 1918 T Gewehr rifle designed specifically to take out tanks. I didn't get to take out many vehicles with it, unfortunately. Its pickup is quite far out of the way at E, but I did kill someone with it in one hit, which was very satisfying. All of the elites come with grenades, and as a quick tip, they can also get into vehicles. Bear that in mind. Thankfully, they died pretty easy as long as you played to their weaknesses, and I never felt they were too overpowered. That being said, when the beta drops, we can fully appreciate how powerful they are in a live environment and played carefully. Horses, we finally got to play with them. That's right, in the open beta we can gallop around to our heart's content on our four-legged friends. When you spawn in on a horse, on the deployment screen you become a cavalry class, and when on the horse you've got a rifle as your primary weapon. It's usually 2 shots to kill someone, and then you've got a sword as a secondary. The sword swings from the right side of the horse, but don't worry, if you don't hit, you can just trample your enemies, and honestly, sometimes that was actually easier. The hitbox on the horse seems to be pretty large. Also be careful if you kill the rider of the horse will still continue to run forward like any other vehicle if you kill the driver. Lastly, as a horse you can drop out health packs and ammo, and you're also equipped with 2 light anti-tank grenades, and it's possible to get a tank kill just like in the trailer if the tank is pretty low, but the light grenades only do around 12 to 15 damage, so it's going to be unlikely in most situations. Okay, moving on. The train. In the alpha we had the airship, but now we've got the armoured train. First off, there are multiple player slots on the train just like the airship. The driver himself can control the train and position it wherever he chooses, so up and down the track. It is a train after After all, the movement is limited to backwards and forwards. But the interesting thing is here that there are 2 flags on the map that the train passes through, and as such you can actually help to capture flags D and A. This makes the train far more valuable. Lars Gustafsson has said that DICE have looked at ways to potentially make the airship more valuable in the sky as well, so perhaps it could end up having flag capping mechanics in the final game, making it a lot more useful. As for the Dreadnought though, I don't really see that happening unless there's a flag that has part of it out at sea. That would not only give these behemoths more use, but it would give the defending team way more reason to take it out faster. I will say though that I honestly didn't feel the train was too overpowered. With a few people focusing fire, especially from the air, it could be taken out quite easily. Now moving on, we're going to take a look at Rush, because Rush also features in the beta content along with Conquest Large. I would say that Rush is a bit like Marmite. When it was first introduced with the Bad Company series, it worked very well. In fact, it was lots of players' favourite game mode. When it later was introduced to BF3 and BF4 though, it wasn't always accepted as well. In part, that was due to the map design. Some maps worked well for Rush. A good example would be the Damavan Peak map or Dragon Valley remake. That's actually pretty good for Rush in my opinion. Golmud Railway can also be good too. On the other side, there are a lot of maps that aren't that great for Rush. Grand Bazaar in BF3 was just a cluster of enemies trying to get into tiny little rooms, if you remember. Plonking down MCOMs and objectives on top of existing Conquest maps doesn't work out all that great. So overall it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but I for one really like Rush when it works. We now know that Rush is coming back to Battlefield 1 and I've had a chance to play it, but I do think it needs some changes. First off, in BF1 the player count for Rush has been dropped. It's now 24 players, so will server admins be able to overrule this? Maybe, I'm not sure, but the thought behind this is to make it a bit more balanced and tactical with less players. I can see the thinking behind this, and some of the game designers at DICE have always said Rush is a 24 player game mode. My thoughts on that initially was, well yeah, that would probably work out pretty well. The original Bad Company game on consoles was 24 players, and that's where Rush came from. How did it pan out in BF1 though? Well, there were a few maps where I struggled to find players at times during my play session, and when you combine this with players going into vehicles, horses, sitting back and sniping, because, well, we all know how fun sniping is in BF1, it means that at times I felt a little bit lost, a little bit bored maybe. But like I said though, this perhaps does make Rush a more tactical game mode. And I wanted to make a point on the vehicles too. In the version that we played, the defending team and the attacking team had access to a tank, and then I believe at least 1 horse per team. That's already 4 players taken from the battle, assuming it's a light tank and not a landship or even a large tank. All of a sudden you're 3 to 5 players down on your team, and that seems a bit mad. I personally think the defenders shouldn't get a tank at all, on certain maps of course. The defenders have all of the weapon emplacements available to them. They also have artillery they can call in by heading to an MCOM and holding U's. I don't think they also need a tank to utilise, but again, this is just based on first impressions and only one map. We didn't have that much time to play, and things like this really come out after a much larger player base has had a chance to play the game for several hundred hours. And I'm sure DICE will look at these statistics of the beta and balance the game accordingly. In fact though, there could be an argument to have 0 tanks on the first MCOM points at all and just have infantry and then maybe get the tanks later on. It's a really tough thing to balance because you don't want too many players and making it just impossible for anyone to arm an MCOM because there's always 10 defenders looking right at it. But on the other side of the scales, you don't want people running around never really seeing anyone to kill or any infantry and just getting eventually killed by 4 guys in a heavy tank. It's a tricky one, I will admit, but it's definitely going to need some work. I think on this map, maybe taking away the defending team's tank and swap it with something like a horse and improve the MCOM artillery strikes could have a good effect on the situation. I just personally don't like the idea of the defending team having a large tank when there are only 12 players on each team. Do you remember the LAV that was in the alpha of BF3 on Operation Metro, and that really screwed up with the balance? It then got removed later on, and I know that in this situation both teams get a tank, so it's a bit different, but even still I think it will need a change. Of course, the best way to properly test Rush is to get in as many people as possible, and we can get some solid feedback about what needs to change, which will happen very soon. Or maybe even add in Squad Rush. That would be pretty awesome. That was fantastic in BF3 and I would love to see it make a return. So there we have it guys, that's my general overview of the new content and content available in the BF1 beta. There will be more detailed videos going up when I can actually get the game on my own PC and record specific things, like a bit of myth busting maybe. I know you guys want to see some of that stuff, especially around the elite classes and the horses, so look out for that. It's going to be coming up. The beta is literally 2 or 3 days away now, so you'll all be able to play it soon anyways. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up, that would be awesome. If you didn't, a thumbs down. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.